Imagine this. June 1950. The Korean Peninsula is a flashpoint. North Korean forces, backed by the Soviet Union, pour across the 38th parallel, catching South Korea and its American allies completely off guard. The initial weeks are a disaster for the UN forces. They're pushed back, cornered into a tiny pocket of land around the port city of Busan. The situation looks grim. It seems like the entire peninsula is about to fall. But in war, the tide can turn in an instant. And for the UN forces, that turning point came not just on the ground, but from the sky. Today, we're diving into the American TimeVault to uncover the daring and devastating air strategy that reshaped the Korean War. This is the story of how American air power went from a desperate defense to an overwhelming offensive, changing the very nature of the conflict. In the early days of the war, the U.S. Air Force, or USAF, was scrambling. Their primary mission was simple: survival. They flew close air support missions, desperately trying to slow the North Korean advance and protect the retreating ground troops. Pilots flew Sabres and shooting stars, engaging in the world's first large-scale jet-versus-jet dogfights against Soviet-made MiG-15s. This infamous MiG alley in northwestern Korea became a legendary battleground, a test of skill and nerve at supersonic speeds. But simply holding the line wasn't a strategy for victory, as the UN forces, led by General Douglas MacArthur, planned a bold counterattack. The amphibious landing at Inchandarolaver power shifted dramatically. The mission was no longer just about defense. It was about paving the way for a massive offensive. The new strategy was called air interdiction. The goal: to strangle the North Korean army by cutting off its supply lines. Think of an army as a living organism. It needs a constant flow of food, fuel, and ammunition to survive. The USAF, along with Navy and Marine aviation, aimed to sever these arteries. The campaign was relentless. Bombers like the B-29 Superfortress, a hero of World War II, were called back into service. They flew deep into enemy territory, targeting bridges, railway yards, and supply depots. Every bridge over the Yalu River, the border between North Korea and China, became a high-priority target. The problem was, these were incredibly dangerous missions. Anti-aircraft fire was intense, and the threat of MiG fighters was ever-present. Pilots described the skies as being thick with flak, a dark cloud of exploding shells. To destroy a single, well-defended bridge, squadrons had to fly through this wall of fire, drop their bombs with precision, and pray they made it back. Many didn't. The famed bridge busters of the 19th Bomb Group became legendary for their courage in these perilous raids on the Sinuiju rail bridges. They faced a tough challenge: knock out the bridges without violating Chinese airspace, a political tightrope that made their job even harder. While the B-29s hit the big strategic targets, smaller, faster fighter bombers like the F-84 Thunderjet and the F-80 Shooting Star took on the tactical fight. They were the cavalry of the skies, swooping down to attack anything that moved. Convoys of trucks, troop concentrations, and railway lines were all fair game. These Roadrunner missions were incredibly effective. They forced the North Koreans to move their supplies almost exclusively at night, drastically slowing down their logistics. The psychological impact was immense. The constant threat of an attack from above wore down enemy morale. But the strategy of interdiction had its limits. The North Koreans and their Chinese allies, who entered the war in late 1950, were masters of improvisation. They built pontoon bridges overnight to replace the ones that were destroyed. They used thousands of laborers to repair bombed-out railways in a matter of hours. They carried supplies on their backs, using frames, moving through the rugged mountains where aircraft couldn't easily spot them. This forced the U.S. to adapt its strategy once again. If they couldn't completely sever the supply lines, they would cripple North Korea's ability to wage war from within. This led to one of the most controversial aspects of the air war: the bombing of North Korea's industrial and urban centers. By 1952, the USAF launched Operation Pressure Pump. The new directive was to destroy North Korea's hydroelectric power plants, the heart of its industry. In a series of massive, coordinated raids, bombers struck the Suhodam and other key power facilities. The effect was immediate. The lights went out across North Korea, and much of its industrial capacity was This also impacted northeastern China, which drew power from these plants, raising international tensions to a fever pitch. The campaign then expanded. Major cities like Pyongyang, the capital, were subjected to extensive bombing. The goal was to destroy military targets, command centers, and war-supporting industries. However, in an era of less precise bombing, civilian areas were inevitably hit. The destruction was staggering. By the end of the war, it was estimated that almost every significant town and city in North Korea was either destroyed or heavily damaged. This air pressure campaign was a key factor in bringing the other side to the negotiating table. The constant, destructive power from the sky, combined with the bloody stalemate on the ground, created a powerful incentive for an armistice. The relentless air raids made it clear that the UN forces could and would inflict unacceptable damage as long as the war continued. It was a grim calculus of destruction, designed to break the will to fight. In July 1953, the Korean Armistice Agreement was finally signed. The guns fell silent, but the legacy of the air war endured. It had proven the overwhelming power of a modern air force. It had pioneered combat tactics and validated the strategy of air and interdiction. But it also came at a tremendous cost, both in terms of aircrew lives and the widespread destruction it caused. The story of the U.S. air strategy in Korea is a powerful reminder of how technology and bold thinking can change the course of a conflict. It was a daring gambit, born from a moment of desperation that ultimately helped to halt the communist advance and preserve South Korea. It set the template for American air power doctrine for decades to come, a strategy of dominance from the skies that would be seen again in Vietnam and beyond. The Korean War is often called the Forgotten War, but the lessons learned in its fiery skies have never been forgotten by military planners. The courage of the pilots who flew into the flak-filled skies and the devastating effectiveness of their missions are a crucial chapter in the history of modern warfare. Thanks so much for joining us in the American TimeVault today. If you found this story fascinating, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let us know in the comments what historical event you'd like us to explore next. See you in the next one.